Hello! So, this is the first Cases for and Against video, and I thought, naturally being me, I thought I'll kick off the first Cases for and Against video with a Doctor Who video, because that is so me. Yeah, that is very, very me. So I thought, in the light of the 50th anniversary, I thought I'll do a case for an episode which has aired recently for Doctor Who, which has gone under some very, very harsh criticism. Yes, this is my case for the Rings of Akhaten. Right. Before I get started with my case for, not only this is a case for the Rings of Akhaten, but this is also a sort of video response to Mr. Ed Smyth's Rings of Akhaten review, in which he didn't like the episode altogether. So basically, I'm just going to annoy him unintentionally. Sorry, Ed. So, without further ado, let's begin the case for the Rings of Akhaten. For those of you who don't know what the Rings of Akhaten is, the Rings of Akhaten is the 7th episode to Doctor Who Series 7 Part 2, and is more or less Clara's 2/4th adventure with the Doctor. The Rings of Akhaten, judging by the name, takes place on the Rings of Akhaten itself, in the distant future on an alien market, which bases itself around religion. And basically the main plot of the episode is that something bad is stirring afoot, involving a god and a girl who's scared of singing a song. And it's down to the Doctor and potentially Clara to try and save this girl from being sacrificed to Grandfather. I do apologise if I was being very hesitant with the speech. It's hard trying to synthesise an episode which I'll have to try and get lots of Doctor Who fans and lots of other people like you lot to try and agree with. But trust me, it's a brilliant episode all the same. So, the Rings of Akhaten does have its faults, but I only find very few faults. Mainly because I actually adore this episode. It's, to me, an underrated classic in Doctor Who. And it doesn't really deserve all this slaughtering and all this harsh criticism. Mainly because half the Whovian fan base has no real concept of sentimentality or any other form of emotions, because they think they're cool like that. Okay, given granted, Doctor Who has become far more emotional in these recent years since the reboot, but then again, TV does have to adapt in order to change. And, and engage with a new generation. And if things stayed like the classic series, even in the 2005 reboot, well, that's not going to captivate much of the audience without giving up a bit of sentimentality, or as many people will put it in the terms of slang, feels. I didn't want to say that word, but one of the things that really makes Rings of Akhaten stand out for me is the concept of religion, which Neil Cross uses. I know we have been confined to using religion on Earth, specifically for certain science fiction stories, mainly in Doctor Who, like the Church, for instance. But using religion in other alien cultures is beautifully written, and it's a lovely concept for the Rings of Akhaten, which is truly underrated. Not to mention the use of sentimental objects as a form of currency on the actual marketplace for the Rings of Akhaten. It is actually brilliant. And okay, so the Rings of Akhaten might have been a sort of a last minute thing, but it is put together brilliantly, specifically with the religious concepts and the use of sentimental objects as a form of currency. Whilst on the note of the religious concept, the idea of all the inhabitants worshipping the only god, or Grandfather, is again lovely. And the fact that they all share a belief, again, does really emphasise the religion really well. It's a little subtle, and it's nicely written. So need I remind you that the Rings of Akhaten has quite a few definitive moments which could potentially define Matt Smith as the 11th Doctor. For the Whovians who are watching this, I am of course talking about Matt Smith's speech by feeding the only god / Grandfather his stories, his entire life. This is an example to why Matt Smith is a brilliant Doctor, and which is slightly ironic because if a moment like that can be found in an episode which is truly disliked amongst a Doctor Who fan base, such as, then seriously, this episode deserves a much more positive look into. As I said, this is Clara Oswald's second/4th adventure with the Doctor. With her 2 other counterparts, being Oswin Oswald appearing in Silence of the Dogs, and her other one, Clara Oswin Oswald from The Snowman. And well, for this version of Clara's second adventure, well, Clara serves far more purpose than just being a companion there for the adventure. She serves in a purpose because she is the person who is willing to help the victim, Mary Gillel, a little child. I'll go into more depth about her later. In this episode, we actually do get to see Clara show off her, let's say, caring attitude towards children. Obviously, previous versions of Clara, okay, the Victorian Clara does show a good relationship with children, and in the Bells of St. John, Clara again is seen to be the nanny. But this Clara also shows to be caring towards children that aren't even personal to her as such. And if they need help, they need help. And, well, need I say more? We actually get to see a bit more character depth to Clara. Also on the note of children, Mary Gillel was fantastic. A scared child who was played perfectly by Emilia Jones. Well done, Anna Jones. You created a brilliant child actress here who's also brilliant at singing and Emilia Jones might quite possibly have solved the Series 7 soundtrack for me. I mean, the music in this episode is absolutely phenomenal. Aaron Blackburn, who directed, again, another poorly received episode, The Doctor, the Wind and the Wardrobe, beautifully executes each scene of the Rings of Akhaten, especially the pre-titles, which actually gives the Rings of Akhaten a much more important role in the series. In fact, the whole canonicity of Doctor Who, instead of just being a second adventure for a new companion. The pre-title sequence gives the Rings of Akhaten a much more definitive purpose, primarily because it talks about the origins of Clara, or the 3rd/1st version of Clara anyway, if you get what I mean. I mean, talking about how her parents met because of a leaf, which becomes far more justified, the leaf that is, far more justified in towards near the ending of the episode where Clara finishes off Grandfather once and for all. Obviously, the Rings of Akhaten shows a much more fantasy side towards Doctor Who than its more science fiction origins, but then again, that was something that kind of appealed to me, and yes, there was Sonic X Machina. But however, that Sonic X Machina didn't ruin it for me. If anything, it seemed much more feasible than anything else. And plus, well, okay, you get the drift. Anything else I would like to add to the Rings of Akhaten apart from the astounding music, its concept of religion, Matt Smith's awe-inspiring acting, and Clara Oswald being such a much more of a relevant character, and the pre-titles obviously. Not much, well, apart from the space bike scenes, but a nitpick which doesn't really ruin the episode. But the Rings of Akhaten is not necessarily flawed, it's just underrated, and people need to understand that the Rings of Akhaten has sentiment, obviously, and well, it should be appreciated not only for its sentiment, not only for the acting, not only for Aaron Blackburn doing a much more superior job at directing, but also for the concept of religion, and also for Emilia Jones. Thank you, Alec Jones, once again. And well, I think Doctor Who fans should really look at this episode once again and don't feel bored by this episode because it is such a fantastic episode. Okay, so the change of narrative was a bit off, but this episode deserves much more. So that was my case for the Rings of Akhaten. Please feel free to let me know what your thoughts are for this case. Did you like this case? Or do you approve of it? Do you think you can have your changed opinions on the Rings of Akhaten? Please let me know in the comments below or on Facebook or Twitter. My Facebook and Twitter links will be posted below, as well as my other YouTube channel, Eddtings. Please check that one out. And also, I've got my blog review of the Rings of Akhaten if you want to read the written version. Again, it will be in the description below. I am Eddie Thomas, and I hope you enjoyed this video. This is a channel in which you can debate about the topics you love, be it a case for the topics you like, or a case against the topics you truly and utterly despise.
Well, yeah. There's not much really you can say in it. It's just